Manipur, a state in northeastern India, has been experiencing severe violence recently, causing significant distress and concern among its residents and observers. The state has a complex history and a diverse mix of ethnic groups, including Meiteis, Nagas, Kukis, and several smaller communities. These groups have distinct cultural identities, languages, and historical grievances that sometimes lead to conflicts. The latest violence is a reflection of these deep-seated issues. The recent violence in Manipur began with clashes between the Meitei community, which primarily lives in the Imphal Valley, and the Kukis tribes, who mostly inhabit the hill districts. The conflict has its roots in long-standing issues over land, resources, and political representation. The Meiteis, being the majority in the valley, have significant political power, while the hill tribes feel marginalized and often neglected by the state administration. One of the main triggers for the recent violence was a dispute over land ownership and forest rights. The state government decided to evict several villages in the hill areas, claiming they were illegal encroachments on forest land. This decision was met with strong resistance from the Kukis tribes, who argued that they had been living in these areas for generations. The evictions led to protests, which soon turned violent. The violence escalated quickly, with reports of arson, looting, and attacks on people from both communities. Several villages were set on fire, forcing hundreds of families to flee their homes. The clashes resulted in numerous casualties, with people being killed and many others injured. The scale of the violence shocked the entire state and drew attention from across the country. In response to the escalating violence, the state government imposed curfews and deployed additional security forces to the affected areas. Despite these measures, sporadic incidents of violence continued, making it difficult for authorities to restore peace and normalcy. The central government also intervened, sending paramilitary forces to assist in controlling the situation and urging both communities to maintain peace. The violence in Manipur has deep historical roots. The state has a long history of ethnic tensions and insurgencies. During the colonial period, the British established separate administrative regions for the hill tribes in the valley, which laid the groundwork for future divisions. After India's independence, these divisions persisted, with the hill tribes often feeling marginalized by a Meitei-dominated state administration. The demand for an inner line permit, ILP system, by the Meiteis has been a contentious issue. The ILP is a special permit required for outsiders to enter certain areas of northeastern India. The Meiteis argue that the ILP system is necessary to protect their land and culture from outside influences. However, the hill tribes fear that the implementation of the ILP system would further marginalize them and restrict their access to resources and opportunities. The violence has also been fueled by economic disparities and competition for resources. The Imphal Valley, where the Meiteis reside, is more developed and has better access to infrastructure and services compared to the hill districts. The hill tribes often feel neglected and deprived of development opportunities, leading to frustration and resentment. These economic disparities have exacerbated ethnic tensions and contributed to the recent violence. Another significant factor contributing to the violence is the proliferation of armed groups in the region. Manipur has been plagued by insurgent groups that represent various ethnic communities and have their own political agendas. These groups often engage in violent activities to assert their demands and maintain control over their territories. The presence of these armed groups has made it challenging for the government to maintain law and order and address the root causes of the conflict. The recent violence has had devastating effects on the people of Manipur. Many families have been displaced, losing their homes and livelihoods. The destruction of property and infrastructure has further strained the already limited resources in the state. Schools, hospitals, and other essential services have been disrupted, making it difficult for people to access basic necessities. The psychological impact of the violence on the people cannot be overlooked. Many have experienced trauma and fear for their safety. The loss of loved ones, homes, and a sense of security has left deep scars on the affected communities. Rebuilding trust and fostering reconciliation between the conflicting groups will be a long and challenging process. To understand the recent violence, it's essential to look at the broader context of Manipur's history. The state has always been a melting pot of different ethnic groups with their own unique cultures and identities. This diversity has often been a source of pride, but also a cause of conflict. The British colonial rule created administrative divisions that separated the hill tribes from the valley people, sowing the seeds of future discord. After India gained independence in 1947, Manipur became part of the Indian Union. However, the integration process was fraught with challenges. The hill tribes felt that their interests were not adequately represented in the new political setup, leading to feelings of alienation and neglect. Over the years, these grievances have manifested in various forms of protest and resistance. One of the key issues has been the demand for autonomy and greater political representation. The hill tribes have long sought more significant control over their own affairs, arguing that the state government, dominated by the Meiteis, does not address their needs adequately. This demand for autonomy has often clashed with the Meiteis' desire to maintain the state's territorial integrity and political unity. The introduction of the Inner Line Permit (ILP) system has been a particularly contentious issue. The Meiteis believe that the ILP is necessary to protect their land and cultural heritage from external influences. However, the hill tribes fear that the ILP will further marginalize them and restrict their access to resources and opportunities. This fear has been a significant factor in the recent violence. Economic disparities between the valley and the hill districts have also played a crucial role in fueling tensions. The Imphal Valley, where the Meiteis are concentrated, is more developed and has better access to infrastructure and services. In contrast, the hill districts, home to the Kukis and Naga tribes, lag behind in terms of development. This economic imbalance has created a sense of injustice and resentment among the hill tribes, who feel that they are being left behind. The presence of armed insurgent groups has further complicated the situation. Manipur has a long history of insurgency, with various groups representing different ethnic communities. These groups have their own political agendas and often resort to violence to achieve their goals. The proliferation of arms and the ease with which these groups can carry out attacks have made it difficult for the government to maintain law and order. The recent violence has had severe consequences for the people of Manipur. Many families have been displaced, losing their homes and livelihoods. The destruction of property and infrastructure has further strained the state's limited resources. Schools, hospitals, and other essential services have been disrupted, making it difficult for people to access basic necessities. The psychological impact of the violence has been profound. Many people have experienced trauma and fear for their safety. The loss of loved ones, homes, and a sense of security has left deep scars on the affected communities. Rebuilding trust and fostering reconciliation between the conflicting groups will be a long and challenging process. Efforts to address the root causes of the violence have been ongoing. The state government has been working to improve infrastructure and services in the hill districts, aiming to reduce economic disparities. There have also been initiatives to promote dialogue and understanding between the different ethnic communities, with the goal of fostering a more inclusive and harmonious society. The central government has also played a role in trying to resolve the conflict. It has deployed paramilitary forces to assist in maintaining law and order and has urged both communities to work towards peace. The government has also been exploring ways to address the demands for greater autonomy and political representation, seeking a solution that balances the interests of all parties involved. However, these efforts have faced numerous challenges. The deep-seated mistrust between the different communities makes it difficult to achieve lasting reconciliation. The presence of armed insurgent groups further complicates the situation, as they often resort to violence to assert their demands. Additionally, the economic disparities between the valley and the hill districts continue to fuel resentment and frustration. To move forward, it is essential to address the underlying causes of the conflict. This includes ensuring equitable development and access to resources for all communities, promoting dialogue and understanding between different ethnic groups, and addressing the demands for greater autonomy and political representation. It is also crucial to strengthen law enforcement and counterinsurgency measures to prevent further violence. In conclusion, the recent violence in Manipur is a reflection of deep-seated issues related to land, resources, and political representation. The conflict has its roots in historical grievances and economic disparities, which have been exacerbated by the presence of armed insurgent groups. The violence has had devastating effects on the people of Manipur, displacing families, destroying property, and causing significant psychological trauma. Efforts to address the root causes of the conflict are ongoing, but they face numerous challenges. To achieve lasting peace, it is essential to promote equitable development, foster dialogue and understanding between different ethnic communities, and address the demands for greater autonomy and political representation. Strengthening law enforcement and counterinsurgency measures is also crucial to prevent further violence.